Hi, this is DJ Chris with Janet Phelan, and she has graciously agreed to be on our call to record a session about her new book and to talk about targeting in general. She's in Mexico right now and has graciously come to meet me to talk about her new book. And whatever goes with targeting, we're going to give her a completely open mic for whatever she wants to talk about, carte blanche, like with Frank Allen. I worked with Frank Allen at the beginning, and now I'm branching off on my own. Welcome, Janet, to the call. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. I love to talk about my book, and I appreciate very much the opportunity.
Yeah, I read the book, and the first part was the Roundup, using Roundup, and we use vinegar, salt, Dawn, and lemon instead, and it works much better. So that was an interesting part of your book, and the fact that Bayer now owns it, and they're part of IG Farben that got broke up, according to your book. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, there are so many indications that that we have entered an arena where biological and chemical warfare is being used against people. And there is a chapter in the book concerning the purchase of Monsanto by Bayer. And as you correctly stated, Bayer was a part of the breakup of IG Farben after the war. It was thought, IG Farben was the corporation in Germany that made the Zyklon B gas that killed people. And the thought was that you needed to break up this big corporation because it was far too powerful and far too deadly. And it was broken into several smaller components, one of which was Bayer. And so when Bayer bought Monsanto, it ended up positioning itself as a very powerful company, because not only does Monsanto have so many outreaches into food and chemicalization of food and those trans, I don't want to call them transgender, they're not transgender. The seed. Yeah, not only that.
There's Indian farmers committing suicide because the Monsanto seeds take too much water.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
It's horrible.
Well, Bayer, so Bayer, having purchased Monsanto, basically has food, pharmaceuticals, and, as many people do not know, and is highlighted in that chapter in the book, many outreaches into water. So Bayer ends up controlling almost everything that we consume. So that was one of the reasons that I included that chapter in the book. So a lot of the book is aimed towards, shall we say, dispelling people's ideas, notions that that we're in a safe environment, because we're actually in a very assaulted situation, chemically and biologically. So the chapter on Monsanto goes towards that perception. There is a whole section in the book entitled, State of the Science, which goes into the use of genetics and what I call the U.S.'s obsession with genetics, which appears to be in service of creating an advanced form of gene weaponry. And another chapter within that section goes into a case study in South Africa, where a doctor named Wouter Besson appears to have used his position as director of the biological weapons program under apartheid South Africa, appears to have used that position to very possibly develop and deploy a blacks-only bioweapon. So these concerns, I think, are very strong. And
yes, they attack the melanin. They attack the melanin in the black people.
Yeah, and lo and behold, following the years after Phelan appeared to be perfecting his blacks-only bioweapon, and he was known to be working on this, lo and behold, there began to be evidence of its deployment, and then this is also documented in the book. So we have sneaky people who are attacking communities and actually more and more larger communities with sneaky kinds of weapons.
Using a duplicate water system in certain areas, to deploy these chemicals in certain neighborhoods. And interesting, the Eagle Access countries don't have duplicate water pipes, according to your book.
Well, isn't that interesting? It appears that actually research, and I spent months going through WikiLeaks cable releases to try to determine how extensive the U.S.'s deployment and exportation, is that the right word? Exporting this double-line water system, this weaponized water system, how far they went. And I found mention in WikiLeaks cable releases post-invasion Iraq. It looked as if this system had been constructed. So pre-invasion, no. Post-invasion, yes. So whatever the the problems with the quote-unquote evil dictator Saddam Hussein, I'm not aware that he was using this sneaky kind of water weapon to destroy his own people.
Right, so, because he had free water or primary water coming through, and he brought water to the people, and that was the first thing they bombed, was that water system he brought in. But that was without a double system. Wow. That was fresh water. But then now they're going to put a double system in, see?
Well, when you destroy a country and you bomb it almost into the Stone Age, and then you so nicely volunteer to rebuild the infrastructure, you have a marvelous opportunity to put in your weaponized water system. And that this has been located, this weaponized water system, which is detailed thoroughly in my book, has also been located in Canada, in Switzerland, in Israel, and in at least one capital city in Latin America. And this is thought to be a highly limited and inadequate list. It's very possible that many other countries have now adopted this system. So I think
this is for population control. We did eugenics in the past, and that's the world controllers that want to have the world under their control, want less people, and I'm assuming they're going to either chemicalize us with bioweapons or pharmaceuticals.
Well, unfortunately, all this sounds like a conspiracy theory, except that when we look at what happened with COVID, well, we know it isn't. It isn't a theory at all. Right.
Exactly. I read all of your articles during the last 3, 4, 5 years on activist posts, so I've kept up. And you're correct. You actually nailed it way before anyone else did. So you should be congratulated for that. And again, your book is called At the Breaking Point of History by Janet Phelan. and that's the decades of U.S. duplicity enabled the pandemic, and of course it did, and you nailed it on the head. Would you like to talk about that?
Well, I don't think there's any joy or pleasure in nailing it on the head here. I appreciate your stating this. What I'm working at now is really trying to continue to educate other people, because now we have this COVID crisis, which actually I predicted a couple of decades ago. Right. Not specifically COVID, but specifically a pandemic. So now we're waist deep in the big muddy, and so many people have died, and it doesn't appear that the plague agenda has ended. In fact, the United Nations is now considering and trying to implement a two-pronged effort to cement global pandemic protocols. One is through amending the international health regulations, which is the committees are ongoing and meeting now, and the other effort is through the creation of a pandemic treaty. Now, I'm a little appalled because how can you, in any good faith, create a global pandemic treaty to ostensibly address any future global pandemics, when in fact we have instituted this secret pandemic delivery system via water? I mean, right. Only all this concern.
This guy, I watch they do chemtrails, geoengineering here every day. I've taken pictures and put it on Twitter. I even sent it to Dane Whittington. It's wild. They're giving it to us from the ground and from the sky.
Yeah. We're under siege.
Yeah.
And bless
People
you
don't
for
believe
doing that.
I know, and they don't believe this COVID and the NRA shot has nothing to do with COVID. And they're starting to want to use NRA shots for heart disease. And then I think COVID was and I this was a trial run to see how we responded. And like an idiot, I got my first 2 shots, and now I have neuropathy in my feet and my arms. I can't drive anymore. I'm literally messed up. Oh, it was all the COVID itself I got was nothing. The shots, my whole right side's numb. Yeah, I can barely walk. So I know I was injured, and I will be compensated for that. And you are correct, and that's why I did this call, because that's what I want to talk about. I know it's a taboo subject, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah, we do have to talk about it, and there are so many researchers and really brave reporters now. I'm finding them mostly on Substack, who are relentlessly detailing the problems not only with COVID, but especially with the quote-unquote, the people call them vaccines, I don't know what they are, mRNA therapies that were given. There should have been a big red flag, because here you have this situation suddenly with this worldwide pandemic back in the beginning of 2020, and why in the world did they institute an experimental procedure, these mRNA vaccines, in order to supposedly address this? That in itself is a big red flag.
Right. They're messing with our DNA, and like you said in your book, Hillary Clinton has people wipe up her DNA, and so did Obama. They don't want anyone to get anyone. No one wants anyone to get their DNA. And that's what they do, is capture it now when you get arrested, and it stays in the system, and the FBI uses it against people.
Not only when you're arrested, there was a newborn screening act passed, I believe it was in 2004, and it is now de rigueur. If you have a baby, that baby's DNA is captured in the hospital. So they really are interested in people's DNA, and they are creating banks with this information. And given the disclosures in my book about how this apparently has already been weaponized and used against people of color, how can we trust them with this precious code to our very vitality and existence?
I agree, and I'm going to tell you, I'm a targeted individual, and I get the V2K, and I'm quite sure they got my DNA, which they take my resonance and use some sort of entanglement with a quantum computer to communicate with me, which is what I'm researching now. And so the DNA even has to do with targeted individuals. In some cases, they're using our DNA to hack our bodies and our brain.
You know, there's so much about this I don't know and don't understand, and I'm hearing these reports from other people, and it's almost unbelievable, but sadly not unbelievable.
No, it's not, because quantum technology, computers, and biohacking, engineering, and neuroscience is all advanced to a greater degree than we even know about.
That's right. In fact, one of the things I found when I was researching my book was that there was a publication in a journal called Military Review, and this was back in 1970. That is over 50 years ago, where the author of the article is self-congratulating and crowing about the fact that they've hacked the code for life, and they are now able to create ethnic weapons 50 years ago.
Oh my Lord.
Are they able to do now? So I think that a lot of this information is possibly scary and overwhelming, but if we don't attend to it, I'm very much afraid for our future.
Yeah, because that's the golden secret is once you break into the DNA code, as I say, you can hack brains, you can hack bodies, you can create bioweapons, you can create electronic weapons, and a lot of this has been around. Just the idea of controlling a brain with cybernetics has been around for almost 100 years.
Well, and here we are.
And here we are.
And here we are. And what do we do about it? Now, I have some plans, limited in nature. As I disclosed in my book, I also started an NGO back around 2009 for the express purposes of engaging the United Nations on pivotal issues. And using this NGO, I twice attended the Biological Weapons Convention in Geneva for the express purpose of blowing the whistle on the U.S.'s biological weapons program, which is, according to the terms of the Biological Weapons Convention, is completely illegal. And I actually got some major attention to because I was, as an NGO, you're allowed to present, you're allowed to speak, you're allowed to engage the convention, which you cannot do as media. And in 2016, I got a rather significant response from many different delegates to my presentation. And it is my thought and my hope now concerning this pandemic treaty that I may also be able to use that NGO to participate in the pandemic treaty and just lay it on the table. How can you, in any good faith, provide a global pandemic treaty, which is supposedly a solution to a global pandemic, when you have a secret delivery system under the streets? And I think, if there's any decency left in delegates to these conventions, if there's any possibility of addressing this headlong catapult that we're in towards losing all our health sovereignty, losing all our rights, going under a global system. If there's any possibility, I'm going to just go for it. So
thank you, and don't forget the brain hacking. That's the big thing. Neuroscience, neurohacking, neuroweapons are the new future. In fact, there's a Zoom meeting today with James Giordano. I'd love to have you try to interview him one day and get the truth behind his neuroweapons and neuroethics stance.
Well, he seems to be sort of, I've watched some of his presentations. He seems to be sort of a participant in all this.
That's what I say. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's a contract under DARPA, and he's in a contract with DARPA right now. So I mean.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have this individual who has emerged as a sort of a proponent of free speech, Elon Musk, who,
right,
on the other hand, is involved in developing Neuralink. So, I don't know how these disparate sorts of endeavors actually mesh. I mean, how can you say that you're a proponent of freedom and free speech and then work on brain chips?
Especially, he's basically a government shill because he does so many contracts with the government for his whatever the link system for the internet. Now he does that low orbiting satellites, that Starlink. So he's got Starlink going. He's going to drill a hole in your head and put 60 wires in your head and have a separate box that talks to your brain. And you know damn well they could just use a little helmet and do the same thing. But they all want to get wired into your brain because it's permanent, it's invasive, and they can interrogate you.
Well, we absolutely need to keep informing other people, educating people as to the real state of the science and what these people in power these technocrats are actually doing. Because on the one hand, they talk about freedom and constitutions and rights, and on the other hand, they work to divest us of the very integrity of our own minds. So we have to just keep working to educate people.
I agree. Now, we pretty much finished the interview. Would you like to meet again to talk about your book, Exile? I had a father with dementia, and I went through some things too. We could probably have a whole hour about that in the future. Would you be interested?
Yeah. There are some very unusual parts to Exile that really don't have much to do. I mean, the story does have some relevance to what happens to older people, but there's a whole other side to this book as well. So please do read it, and if you're still interested in having me back on, I would love to discuss it. Thank you very much, Chris.
That's great. Exile is available at the Book Patch. It's in PDF form, and you can get the book mailed to you. So it's the Book Patch, and that's Exile by Janet Phelan. And then we just discussed Exile, and now at the breaking point of history. And then, of course, George Bush signed into law, letting them experiment on children, and of course, they're taking the DNA. So if you're a concerned parent, you need to listen up to us and learn that they're after everybody, the seniors and the kids. Thank you, Janet, for coming on.
Thank you very much, Chris. You have a good day. God bless.
You too. God bless. Thank you.